Welcome to Slice Serve, a new tennis podcast by tennis nerds for wannabe tennis nerds. This is your place to satisfy your curiosity and leave feeling just a little bit smarter and appreciative of this game that we all love. Let's get started.
Welcome to Slice Serve. We are Raghu and Ravi bringing you yet another new episode, and we're super excited to talk about felt pain and the making of the tennis ball. I can't wait
God.
to dive in.
The felt pain is that I have not been playing as much tennis as I wish I could.
Or as well as you think you should.
Ouch. Okay, now that really hurts.
So it's felt, maybe it could be felt love if you're playing really well, but for a lot of time I feel it's like it's a pain. You're on the other side. I recently came across Djokovic smelling the tennis ball and showing his love for the tennis ball. It's just such a unusual sort of esoteric sort of a moment, if you will. Like I just have not seen that in a long time from tennis players.
That makes me feel
I think he
human
was
because
asked
when I
about
open
it.
a new balls, the first thing I do is smell it. So I feel I have one more thing in common with Novak.
He talked about how growing up he would love the tennis ball and the fondness for the smell of it. It's just a topic that doesn't come often, and I just thought it's just relevant for what we are trying to share here today. I think they asked the same question for a few other players of the tennis ball, and it's just because tennis ball are somewhat not unique. It's just a tennis ball, and although I got to tell you a personal story. Recently, like about a year and a half or so ago, when I started playing with Ravi and his friends in a local league here, people are very particular about what tennis ball they would use, and they all were using, I think, pen.
Hmm.
And what's a pen brand, specific model, Ravi? Your team
Oh my
using?
gosh, I don't even know at this point. There's so many of
Yeah.
them.
And this was like after COVID, and there's a shortage of tennis balls, and so
Ah.
they said, "Oh, you should only get pen because the best." Blah blah blah. So, you know, true to myself, I went and got Dunlop. And I grew up actually with Dunlop tennis balls. And so I'm like, wow, awesome. I'm just going to get something different just to kind of annoy people at the very least. And everyone was like, so I took my new tennis ball, my Dunlop tennis balls to the court, and everyone was like, what is this thing? And so they quietly kept it aside and started using pen. And periodically, I remove my Dunlop tennis balls and then introduce that into the mix.
Oh
And
man.
they were claiming that it would actually throw off their game, like whatever. But I still have a stack of Dunlop tennis balls. I think a box of 20.
Oh
So
man.
I'm a loyal Dunlop fan.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I just found that on hard courts, my game is just a little bit better with Wilson balls. They bounce up just a little bit more. Yeah, the pens die sooner, but if they start sponsoring this podcast, I'm sure they'll live much longer.
Anything to get an edge on the tennis court, either to annoy people or use some of the tennis ball that's quirky. So there
Yes,
you go.
exactly. Well, I wonder if I could learn more about the differences between these two balls. Raghu, you got anything for me on that?
We're going to jump right in because we're going to cover a little bit. Usually in our podcast, we talk a little bit of history, right? Get us grounded, learn how we got here. But we also going to cover like materials, how the ball is composed. These are things that I did not know until I actually started working on the podcast myself. Different colors of the tennis ball. There are more colors than
Oh, wow.
how it's produced, manufactured, and we'll get into some exciting things at the very end. I can't wait to share about tennis balls.
Oh man, let's
And we
go.
can
Yeah. I would love to nerd out on all the details behind the tennis balls. I always
yeah,
wondered.
yeah. It's one of those like tennis ball is something that you play with every time you step on the court. Kind of anonymous for most part, but I think it'll make you a little bit more smarter and just be more appreciative of this awesome product that you get to play with every day.
I
So let's
do
go.
remember just noticing that there's a lot of nuance to it from the player's perspective because I remember who's that Australian Ash Barty, Ash Barty, world number one, who just retired at the top. She used to joke about like she could not play with the U.S. Open balls. Her game completely would change. So I wondered about that. Like, wow, how good are you that you can tell these differences? So I would love to learn more.
You will get into some of that.
All
It's
right.
actually interesting that there's differences, and you're like, wow, I never thought about that. And so let's go back in time a little bit. The history of tennis ball, it goes back over 700 years, believe it or not. It's gone through an amazing revolution, and there's a lot of technology in this little product that we have. In the 1300s, the French gave a gift of a bag or set of tennis balls to the English King Henry V. And for whatever reason, he felt it was an insult. He rejected it. And apparently that kicked off the Hundred Years' War between France and England. And yeah, they needed a reason. So tennis balls, here you go. the
So
little the little one that kicked off a war. So that's infamous, I would say, how it got started. And that's one of the earliest references to the tennis ball. So about after 150 years, the English just wanted to pick a fight again with England and with France and everyone else, and said, okay, we're going to ban the tennis ball. So they just banned it. And that's amongst many other items. They don't want the tennis ball into their country. Again, there's not much rationale or like reasoning behind it as to why they did it, but they were just in the business of just stopping stuff from coming into the country, I guess. Then in 1480, this time the King Louis 11 of France, he wanted to also ban a bunch of things. So he said, okay, I'm going to ban use of chalk and sawdust and earth in the making of tennis ball. And they're like the only materials he wanted to use. The French, and they're all about high quality and the looks, and you can just imagine like it all started back in the day, in hundreds of years ago. He said, "You shall only use leather. It is stuff with wool." Is kind of where he started, and it's just kind of
wait,
odd, but
this king wanted uh tennis balls that were leather outside and wool on the inside?
yeah,
Oh my
he
goodness.
wanted to be nice and soft, I guess, and then he wanted to be long lasting. And again, I'm sure like they didn't use it on the tennis racket, maybe using a paddle, like a wooden paddle racket or something. But it
The
was
it's not enough to just kill the cows for the outside. Let's also kill the sheeps for the inside.
so he said, I want to be different. I want to have high quality. So I'm just going to make my own version of the tennis ball.
All right.
So as time went on in the 16th century, people started using materials like animal fur, I mean, grossly animal intestines and muscles to fill up the tennis ball inside. So to make it more, I would say, robust, so have a proper bounce. And so they started using all kinds of materials. In the 18th century, they were using strips of wool that would wrap around these materials inside to have it so it's tight. And they would use a white cloth on top of it finally and
Mm.
sew it to cover the ball. So they use all kinds of, you know, creative ways to try to make the ball round and stable so it doesn't come off and sort of shred. And then Scots also got involved, and they actually they wrapped the stomach of a sheep or a goat with wool and tied with a rope. And so that's sort of like how they got into this. And they tried different things. They tried to put putty, human hair, anything to make it bounce and last. I think they're all experimenting. The attempts are made with using human hair with the string covered with flannel. So there's all these things people are trying to do to put different materials and also covering on top. Up until the 1870s, most of the times it was played indoors or on concrete floors. So they're
Yeah.
just, I think, mostly it was for bounce at that point, and they're not really figured a way to make it bounce outdoors until lawn tennis showed up in the late 1800s. It was just mostly experimental with different materials. And then finally, they started making the ball with a cork,
Mm.
with the fabric tightly wound around it. And anything we could go in the cork shell. And they have tried all these different kind of materials. So it's kind of fascinating over hundreds of years what people have tried to make the ball bounce. So you can now appreciate, as we get closer to the modern version of the tennis ball, how much tech has gone into it to make it actually work. And
So
it's thick. a lot of evolutions.
This cork ball, do you have any information on whether it was still stuffed or was it empty on the inside? Or was it
It was
actually
stuffed.
just full cork?
It was actually stuffed.
I see, I see.
They tried to stuff things also a little bit inside
Hmm.
and maybe they tried to make it a little bit heavier. Cork is light, so maybe they tried to mix things up. So funny enough, Americans got involved, and the tire was also genesis of the modern tennis ball. In 1839, Charles Goodyear, he's an American pioneer. He
That
differed what's called
Goodyear,
the
the
Goodyear,
tire Goodyear
actually
guy?
the tire Goodyear.
Of
So the
course,
guy who
okay.
actually basically invented tires.
Ah,
So he discovered what's called the vulcanization process, where you create a more stable rubber, right? And you use heat and sulfur. And so Germans took that and then they started making vulcanized rubber balls. And I think as a kid growing up, I have used like rubber balls like that, like entire rubber. I don't know, Ravi, whether you used it. I play cricket
yep.
with it, and I don't know if I played tennis, but certainly those exist and they're kind of cheap.
We, I don't know if you played this version of this game, but we used to, growing up in South India, we used to play a game that the name translates roughly to puncturing your back. So
Wild.
we would chase each other as two teams and like throw a heavy rubber ball, and if you have to hit another person's back, and then you get a
Yeah, I
point.
know. The
But
target practice. Yeah. Yeah. Take out all your angst against your friends.
exactly.
Yeah. So I think that those are one of the offshoots. Now you can still see it, but that's one of the earliest versions of a tennis ball that came together. And in 1940s, Japan bombed the Pearl Harbor. So tennis ball manufacturing in the US actually was severely affected and stopped. They used to rubber at that point to make tennis balls. And so people would buy the balls in bulk due to scarcity. And there's a black market.
Hey, so just occurred to me. So the balls that Goodyear made with rubber, again, were those? I can't imagine they would be stuffed with rubber because that would be too heavy, right? Is that where they started filling it with air?
That comes later. That comes
Okay.
later. So Goodyear created the vulcanization process, and then Germans actually used that rubber
Mm,
to make their tennis balls. So that's sort of like how. So that just so that it's just as a better bounce.
interesting.
So they did. You're right. They did fill the ball with air for better bounce at that point. So maybe they use the rubber more for shell, and so it's more consistent. Which is,
So
I think, how even today the rubber balls are made. Um,
okay, okay. So the Americans were responsible for the air then, in a sense, or was it the Germans?
So the Germans actually innovated.
Mm,
Americans came up with the rubber creation of rubber,
got
and
it,
then
got
they
it,
made it fill it with air so that it has a proper bounce and some more stability.
got it.
So due to the Pearl Harbor bombing, the scarcity, and that led to the next innovation, which was people tried to create balls with non-rubber materials. One of the such innovation was what's called a victory ball. It was made of
Mm.
reclaimed rubber with with black seams, and it bounced about 6 inches less than the traditional balls. So the rubber is actually very bouncy, and if you can imagine, so the original balls were a little bit too bouncy, probably too fast. So to reduce it and put a little bit of drag into this, so they were using reclaimed rubber. So
Ah,
that was, and this is like Penn actually was one of the big brands that actually started making using reclaimed recycled rubber. And then finally, yeah,
recycled rubber bounces less or something.
it's sort of like what, and they use some different seams also to kind of like create a little more heaviness, and that's sort of like interesting, like what that's like another innovation. And I think Penn got involved, and then that became more mainstream at that point in the 90s, and somewhat like not related to the evolution of tennis ball, but for those of us who are interested in sort of like some of the other political other aspects stories around tennis and technology is in 2016 in the Republic Convention in the US. They banned 72 different kinds of weapons, and they included tennis ball as one of the weapons in there.
What?
And so for what it's worth, they felt it was more dangerous than carrying a gun. Um,
Ah, America.
And so your little tennis ball, was
Wow. Okay.
deemed. This was very recently. We're only talking about 8 years ago. But the tennis ball has
So
gone
wait, this
through.
this is just tennis balls, not tennis balls attached to ball machines.
They could. I mean, one could actually get something
Okay,
like that.
maybe I can imagine wheeling a ball machine into a Republican convention and then somebody saying stop, but just a tennis ball? Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's it can be used as a with a sling. But there you go. That's sort of a little bit of history of the tennis ball, and I will get more a little bit more on the technology of it. But sort of there's a fascinating story as we kind of just discovered on how tennis balls were came about over time, and over time they've experimented. Humans have experimented with over 15 materials. We talked about cork. We use wool, rubber, cloth, flannel for the outer
Hmm.
covering, leathers for the same. For stuffing in your animal intestines, stomach of the goat, putty, human hair, horse hair, animal
Wow.
fur, pine wood, chalk dust. I mean, I think they just tried to put anything and everything and mix it up, pretty much, and it's crazy. And as we've
Wait,
now come
you
to a
you
more.
you didn't say air, but it sounds like we landed on air, but that's quite a few
Yeah,
materials
air,
that go
and
in.
then you'll see also different other gases that we have actually used in the modern tennis ball. So it's pretty cool. So
Okay.
we'll jump in it right now. So your
Okay.
modern tennis ball actually has three portions to it, right? You
Mm.
got the core that's still made of rubber, and that's then pressurized to have like proper bounce. About then you have something on the outside. It's called nap. It's like
Mm.
it's the green uh, surface that you see in the ball. So that's the nap,
Is it
and
is
then
that is that the felt?
that's the felt,
The nap.
and then
Interesting.
and then the nap is attached to the core with an adhesive,
Hmm.
so it stays with it. So that's sort of like the three piece to it. And so rubber is still used. So all the tennis balls are rubber. So the core is a mix of like different kinds of rubber. It's just not one rubber. They use some premium rubber, synthetic, some natural rubber. And then what they do is they fill the ball with air, nitrogen, or both. So
Hmm.
that is also like an evolution, and they think trying to test the bounce of the ball. So the nap is, as you said, made of. It's called felt. It's made of a combination of wool, nylon, and cotton. And so the reason why the felt is put in, if you think of a rubber ball, it had a lot of bounce and moved very quickly, and it sort of just doesn't have resistance, and also like the impact doesn't have like good touch, I think, on the racket. So the felt adds all of that.
Hmm.
Has a little weight. It has good contact, and you have good traction with the racket, especially the strings. So that's why you have the felt. And so that is like the simple tennis ball, but it's made to very specific. It has a very strong specifications, right? So it's about 2.5 inches wide, the ball that is, approximately the size of your thumb, and it weighs about 2 ounces. So think about it's like 10 nickels. That's what the weight is. Optimal weight, certain width, and it's perfectly round shaped tennis ball.
And are these like specifications now by I don't know ITF or something like that?
Yeah, there's actually specifications and there's a range. And based on the type of tennis balls, and we'll get to that in a second
Okay.
here, it varies with how light it is or how heavy it is. Different manufacturers or different brands have slightly different variations. And so this is where, based on the surface and the tournament director gets to pick which brand they go with and which kind of ball they use.
Hmm.
This is where it goes back to your Ash Barty's comment why US Open is a little bit different than some of the other courts, and there's a good reason for that.
Yeah.
Um, and if you think about like growing up, I remember like I started with playing the white tennis ball.
Oh, you did.
Yes, Lazinger continues to still make them,
Okay.
but I'm sure there's some local brands who make the white tennis ball. And then green came in. I think green was more expensive for whatever reason. And then after time, white just went away. Just they're not as popular. So Ravi, what has been your experience, and what kind of color tennis balls have you used?
Yeah, when growing up, when I played, I didn't know there were these, different gradations that might be even newer, like this whole idea of like leveling or whatever. So I think only have a memory of playing with yellow tennis balls, cheap yellow tennis balls. That's really it. So recently, I've seen maybe one or two other colors, like pink for tennis ball machines, but that's it. What about you?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you had
those
the
are the
white
two.
growing up, you said?
Yeah, white growing up a little bit, and then green all the way. But as I was researching about the color of the tennis balls, there are over 10 different colors today
Hmm.
used for tennis balls,
Oh wow.
and they range from red, orange, green, yellow, by a white, black, even blue,
Oh,
brown, and then, as you said, pink. And they're all used for different purposes. Like, red is used on blue courts primarily, so it's a good contrast.
interesting.
Orange are used on courts that are like 60 feet. They're heavier and slower than the yellow ball. And then green. I have not seen green, but apparently they use on clay courts. Again, probably
Interesting.
contrast.
I've seen red used for junior tennis, but this is you're talking about red for adult tennis?
Yeah, I mean it's esoteric, but apparently it's
Fascinating.
used in certain parts of the world. Different color balls.
Okay.
And purple and blue are the ones I think maybe relevant for you, Ravi. Maybe you should buy a can of that because it's for the dogs, and you can get
Ah,
one for
wow.
bagels.
Wow. Is that just randomly chosen, or is there even some specification somewhere that
I'm
says
sure they
dog
study
balls
the
should be
psychology
purple?
of the dog and how it gets excited, what colors. And there's a brand called Zanies that makes these.
Hmm.
Just for your reference, if you want to go to Amazon and look for them.
My dog just chews on pen.
If you want to give a special birthday gift for bagels, you know where to go and what kind of
Zanies.
brand you need to get. So make a note. And so pink is used for if you're doing a charity match or for a cause. They usually get pink.
Hmm.
Reflect that. Sadly, white is only used for apparently laundry today. So if you want clothes that are don't have wrinkles or less static, you need to buy white tennis balls. So there is a reason to use tennis balls for not tennis related purposes.
What? Okay, wow. I gotta try that.
Yeah, apparently it's a laundry hack using a
It's a
white tennis ball.
laundry hack. Wow.
There you go.
Nice.
So much you can learn from our tennis podcast. You can learn about tennis and you can learn about how to get stuff organized around your house and get some brownie points.
Wow,
Um,
this is a life hack. Wow, this is a life hack podcast now. I love it, Raghu.
there are a lot of benefits here, a lot of benefits. So, as you mentioned earlier, like different color tennis balls are used for different levels of players, and this is like what is kind of prescribed by ITF as well as I think most like tennis clubs. So they use red tennis balls for kids age between 4 and 8. That's where you start. Then they use orange ball for the next level maturation, and usually for age 7 to 10 years old, you grow up a little bit, and then from orange you go to green ball. I have not seen green ball, but that's what they're saying. I think even like places like Singapore uses this color coding mechanism. And so, and then you graduate to this yellow ball, and then people argue what color it is yellow, green, something else.
So the my kid plays with the green ball, and I think it's either just a yellow ball with a green dot on it, or one of the what did you call the felt again? What's that called? The
Nap.
the nap. The
Yeah.
nap is green, and one of the naps is green in color. So that's green
In,
ball.
Interesting. Yeah, I have not seen one in a long time. So yeah, red is the reason is that red is the slowest ball, and they also play in a very small court, the younger age groups, 4 to 8. And then and both the red and orange balls are not pressurized, right? So it's that's I think partly why it's sort of like heavier. And as you move to the yellow ball is faster, and you go to the more standard court size. It's pressurized and it's lighter. And so there's a very logical reasoning why they use pressurized versus not.
The red
So the
ball
slowest,
is definitely bigger as well by some
right?
amount, at least an inch, right?
Yeah, it does it seem much larger than it is, but it's different. And I've seen some balls that are a combination of red and yellow or red and some other like a tinge of orange
Mm.
in the younger age groups. So I want to talk a little bit of like the white ball because I was fascinated by white ball growing up, and I grew up on playing clay courts. For whatever odd reason, yellow white ball would not get dirty, and maybe it is a kind of felt
Mm.
because you can imagine like red clay court. As soon as I start playing on
Yeah.
it, you think like it's going to get like super. It'll turn red or something. I don't remember it ever turning red. It is just white. So up until 1972, the two predominant colors were of tennis balls were white and, believe it or not, black.
Wow.
Who played black tennis balls? Obviously
Like
not made for TV.
professionally, you mean?
Yeah, up until 1972, and then in 1972, color TV comes around, and it was Wimbledon, and BBC is covering Wimbledon, and they said they actually looked at white on the grass court, and they felt on the color TV it is really hard to perceive because they have a white color code for dress at Wimbledon. So white uniform, white
White
color tennis ball,
lines, white
white
lines.
lines. It was just too much.
Interesting.
It's not very visible. And then they were trying to decide between the white and yellow. At that point, the controller for BBC back then was David Attenborough, and then his advice was to
Wait,
pick yellow.
that David Attenborough?
It is that David Attenborough still
Wow,
around,
wow.
making
Big
amazing
links.
National Geographic
I
videos,
know.
and
Watch as this player
so he has a
smacks
hand
the
in
ball.
bringing us the yellow color tennis balls. So he was, he
Wow.
had a different job
Nice.
back then, and probably a great voice. And he said like, even then, so that's when, so Wimbledon said yellow, and then ITF kind of followed suit about 14 years later in '86, and then switched to yellow. So it took a while for them to change. So tennis historically has been slow moving in terms of changing. It's very traditional. It took a while, and this is one of those where eventually they moved to a yellow tennis ball. And then now I think yellow is the standard. For a short period, though, in 1991, white made apparently a comeback, and for
Mm.
nostalgia purposes. I don't know if they use in the ITF tournaments, but it was in a vogue. But interestingly enough, even today, the colors that ITF approves, white and yellow. So they still
Wow.
allow white balls, although I
That's
don't
really
remember
interesting.
seeing.
As you mentioned that, it just occurred to me. It'd be interesting for is so many of these courts now are colored, but somehow the lines are always white. So it'd be interesting if maybe the lines became yellow and then they started playing with white balls on a blue court. Would be quite a colorful spectacle.
I remember seeing some of the tournaments in Europe, indoor courts. They don't use the typical green or blue color courts. They would sometimes use like a brownish red color courts. They would take out the double lines, just have the single lines.
Hmm.
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah. But
And
the
maybe they
lines
can experiment with
themselves
white.
are always white though, right? Like I've never seen those lines in a different color.
Maybe they use like
Maybe
a
they
beige
are.
colored
Yeah.
lines or something. They just for the T, and it's pretty looks pretty cool actually. And maybe they could experiment with white there. So if you think of yellow, it's the reason why they pick yellow is got best visibility in most court surfaces, right? Whether it's clay, hard court, or grass. And it's they've done some like studies around color perception and how brains perceives them. Also color correction. There's lots of folks who have trying to get a good they have visual perception, challenging visual perception. And so they use it and use this particular shade of yellow. And there's a debate. And I'm going to ask you this question, Ravi. Is it yellow
Mm.
or is it green? What do you think?
Sorry, what was your question?
Is the color of the ball yellow or green?
Yellow or green? It's yellow for me.
So there's a scientific poll conducted on Twitter, now called X, where they asked people, what's the color of the ball? And about 52% said green and 42 said yellow.
Oh, interesting. Wait, so just to get this sounds like a proper Twitter poll, because like, what is the color of the yellow ball? Was that the question?
What's the color of the standard tennis ball? There's no bias.
Okay, okay. All right, all right. Okay. Interesting. Wait, so more people said it was green?
Yes.
Interesting.
And I would actually say green. I mean, there's more green in it, I felt, than yellow.
Hmm.
I would be on that side. Um, they're saying but officially they say it's mostly yellow with a hint of green. That's the and they
Okay.
call this color. This is a cool name. Optic yellow
Ooh.
is
Ooh, I like
is
it.
the official color of the tennis ball. So
Oh,
for those
wow.
of you who want to quiz your friends, colleagues at your next tennis game, this could be one that'll get you some brownie points.
I'm going to paint my room optic yellow.
Yellow.
I probably won't be able to open my eyes after that, but
You'll be
who knows?
wallowed
Optic
in
yellow.
your tennis colors.
That's cool.
Yeah, so like they're as you said, the balls that the younger kids, like the kids play with, are unpressurized. That means it's not
Hmm.
filled with any air. Um, and partly they do this because they have also a longer lifespan, because they just get these balls and the kids play for a long period of time. And it's also used for the training balls, the unpressurized version of it. Hence,
So,
they last much longer.
do you know if when you say unpressurized, it's just air at like surface pressure, or is it a vacuum where there's no air?
I think it's the former.
Okay.
It's the air with no extra pressure, just
Extra
probably
pressure. Got it.
normal.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so it's just heavier. It
Hmm.
doesn't have as much of a bounce. So it's great for, I spend a lot of time with my ball machine, so I have a lot of appreciation for unpressurized tennis balls. But your standard tennis ball is actually pressurized. So there are two different kinds of balls. So they use air and then nitrogen to pressurize the ball. And so over time, the air escapes, and nitrogen escapes. And this is when your ball gets softer and it loses the life, right? And
Wait.
that's
How does it escape? Is rubber porous, or is it through the seam? I always wondered like how it actually loses its pressure. That's interesting.
yeah,
I'm gonna assume that.
it is porous. It's not, even though they on the seams they use a certain kind of a tape to cover it. There's a
Okay.
little bit of a porousness, and it escapes through that.
Interesting.
And maybe it's by design. Could be by design.
Yes, I mean, hey, if you want people to buy more tennis balls, that's what I would do.
Give you enough of a whiff, and have you play, and then you know.
Yeah.
Um, so going back to Ash Barty's comment about, hey, the balls on USOP are different, so I can't win.
Hmm.
There is some truth to it. Let's get into this. So your regular tennis balls have like what's called, like, the felt is like just softer. They're used for clay and indoor courts, and they, because the felt is softer, they absorb less dirt, and that sort of explains why they look just clean and fine no matter how long you play with it. On the hard courts, though, the
Hmm.
felt is thicker, because they take the pounding of a Djokovic or a Alcaraz on these courts, and they survive a little bit, just a tad bit longer, because they can't add a whole lot more. It gets heavier, so they can add a little bit more felt.
Just on that note, I don't know if you've seen any slow motion, super slow mo of any professional player hitting the ball, you would have noticed how much felt flies off the ball. So I cannot imagine for every shot. Like, I'm surprised these balls aren't balled at the end of like a few games.
I wonder if they use two different layers, different kinds.
Hmm.
Like the inner felt is just, I guess, not as you know
Actually, that just
woolly, and
thinking
then they
about
use
this,
another layer on top.
it's possible that the felt that's fallen out from the older balls is maybe still on the floor and it's picking it up. Who knows? But I always found that fascinating.
But I do notice that as that felt falls off a little bit, the ball loses more air quickly, and then it gets much more softer, and then that spells the end of that
Interesting.
life for the ball. So maybe that extra felt is holding on, to that air a little bit longer.
I would guess it's just the pressure from the strokes. It's probably just pushing the air out because you said the
That
rubber is porous. I don't
that's
think
true.
I don't think it's the felt. That would be my guess.
Hmm. Fair enough. I think sometimes when you keep the tennis ball, even in your tennis, like those boxes, they lose air over time, just
Hmm.
naturally. Right. This is one that actually threw me off completely, right? And so men's and women's tennis, the women's tennis balls are different than men's. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Uh,
Wow.
I
Like as
like
in structurally, physically different?
the in terms of weight.
Oh, wow.
So the women's, this is, I think, at the professional level, they use a slightly different tennis ball for women's. So
Okay.
the women's tennis ball is slightly lighter. It
Ooh.
moves, apparently leads to faster movement.
Wow.
And I know that this was the case. It's fascinating. It does seem like the women's tennis. It's every passing year the game seems a little bit more faster and faster. I mean, the ball just flies around the court.
Well, just
Uh,
random bit of trivia. I don't know if you heard this. I just heard this yesterday. Is apparently Arina Sabalenka's average forehand speed is faster than Carlos and Novak and one other player, and it just shocked me.
I love it. I actually came across this too, and I was just like blown away by
Yeah. Oh
the
my
swing.
God. I did see some of her strokes. I'm like, I don't want to be anywhere near the path of that tennis ball. Yeah. But anyway, I digress.
Ball tennis ball. I think the lifespan is even shorter when it's hanging out with Sabalenka.
It feels like she will lead to changes in the ball's standards.
The other fascinating thing about between like women's and men's tennis as it relates to tennis ball is I think we should watch the next time they play is the lettering on the women's tennis ball is in the red ink, whereas in the men's tennis ball is in black ink. I think that's how they
Ooh,
differentiate. And it's I never observed
I
this.
will watch for that.
Um,
Yeah, I did not. That's great.
and it's just a nice little touch into the two different tennis balls. Moving on, so like where do these tennis balls come from? Like how are they produced? As we talked earlier on, it was just initially the rubber was filled with it's made with rubber, regular air. Then they start putting pressurized gas into this to make it lighter and move faster. And the way the tennis ball is made is in spherical shape. Is they use a 3-leaf clover design, and that's the way they, you can imagine they take 3 pieces of rubber and then
Oh.
they glue them together.
So
And that's
it's not two hemispheres, it's actually three.
right. And so,
Interesting.
at least previously, that's how it was, right?
Okay.
The walls of the core were not uniform because it was not very uniform. So they started adding nap to it to kind of like keep it smooth and on the outside. And this was used for
Oh.
many, many years. And this allowed both like consistent thickness and also allows for traction, right? So over time, they then moved over from like a 3 method, clover leaf method, to like a, as you alluding to, like a 2-piece method, just
Hmm.
like 2 half shells. So it just kind of goes that way.
Okay.
And that's when they glue them and then they put a seam on it. And they used to use flannel, as you remember back in the day. They still use flannel for many, many years, even in the 1900s. Then they moved to the felt. And instead of vulcanizing and sort of like gluing them together, they apparently now use stitching. They stitch it. And so,
Wow.
um, and there's like a 24-step production process that goes through in a lot of detail. There's videos posted around this by on YouTube and so forth. So it's a fairly reasonably sophisticated process to make your good little tennis ball, right? To come together, and um, it's it's simple, but they have to produce a ton of tennis balls, and just take a wild guess how many tennis balls are manufactured every year.
Every year. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm just looking at how many dead balls I see in our local club. I'll just take a random per year, you said?
Yeah,
Um 500 million?
yeah, a little below that. So it's about 325 million tennis balls are made every year.
Okay. Yes.
Uh,
Okay. I was not actually that
yeah,
far
you're
off. All right.
you're in the ballpark. Yeah,
All right.
and it's just mind-boggling.
That is
Uh,
a huge number though.
yeah,
Wow.
and like what are the
This
brands?
is a sounds like a fantastic business because yeah, they all die and so you have to buy new ones. Oh my.
Yeah, they
What are
have
we
a certain
doing here,
lifespan.
Raghu? We should go start a tennis ball business.
It's a good business to be in. But there's tons of competition. There are
Hmm.
over 200 brands worldwide that
Ooh.
makes, or at least brands tennis balls. I think there's
Okay.
many fewer facilities that actually
Okay.
makes it. And the ones that you commonly know, like Penn, Wilson, my favorite Dunlop, uh,
Mhm.
and then Slazenger still makes it. It's approved by the British and Wimbledon, and they continue to make it for Wimbledon, right? And so it's you can still buy
Hmm.
Slazenger. They're more
Nice.
expensive. Um, then you heard like Gamma, which is I think a lot in the training balls. Um,
Hmm.
most of the factories, as you can imagine, are in the Far East. Thailand makes a majority of tennis balls. There, apparently, Wilson has a factory that churns out 100 million balls every year. So, of the 325, one third comes from
Ooh.
just one factory. So, there's just a handful of them.
Wow.
For what it's worth, the brands just put a name on the on the tennis ball. They all come from the same factory, or slightly different variations. And yeah, so it's Dunlop or Penn or whatever. It's likely mostly similar tennis balls. Not a whole lot of difference. There's hardly any.
Are there any details on like how many, like is this literally like one or two factories that just
Well, this one factory from Wilson produced 100 million plus. So I'm sure Wilson just makes it a white label solution for other brands. They can just put a
oh,
stamp on it and then ship it.
I
Um,
see.
and so I think there's a few more, but there's not like hundreds.
Mm, mm.
Indonesia is known for rubber, and that part of the world is the reason why, because rubber is the main ingredient, and they make it right there. It's quite cheaper, easier to access the raw materials, especially reclaimed rubber, if that's what they're using. So take a wild guess as to how many tennis balls are used in a typical Grand Slam. Let's just take US Open.
Okay. Well, I would say, okay, so maybe a match is about 300 balls times, I don't know, 1,000 matches. I don't know, 100,000 balls?
300 balls a tennis match?
Yeah, just
I
because
was thinking more like
this.
20 balls a tennis match.
No, they say new balls please every 6 games, so I figured like, uh,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So it's first 9 games and then every 6 games, I think, they change new balls. So it's quite a
Yeah,
few. They go through quite a few. I don't know. My random guess is 100,000. Like, how far off am I?
that's right on spot, right? 100,000
It's on
tennis balls.
spot? My
Yeah.
God. I should just go
Ravi,
to Vegas
you
right
have
now.
today's your lucky day.
All right, see you later. I'm heading to Vegas.
You should go pick a, I don't know, a lottery.
Nice.
Yeah, so 100,000 balls, just US Open. So I think just the tennis tour itself probably consumes tens of millions of balls every year.
Yeah, wow.
It's just my guess. Um,
Yeah.
and the number of tournaments that are played between ATP, ITF, and WTA.
I just never gave this much thought, but yeah, right. This is a staggering number and it's big business.
It is big business. So if you think about like how it's packaged, you all these hundreds of millions of tennis balls, how are they packaged? Up until 1925, they're wrapped in paper and then put them in package, just cardboard boxes and shipped to you or picked up. And then 1925, Wilson said, "Look, this is not. I think we have a better way to do this." And they start creating tubes made of
Yeah.
cardboard.
Hmm.
So you just fit in the balls in there, so it is just more compact, easy to move around.
Great.
And in 1926, this is where Penn led to next level innovation, and they actually created the modern pressurized can using metal tubes. So they came up with
Mm.
metal tubes, and today I think we are using plastic tubes. But they created the pressurized can, so maintain pressure, drive longevity. So Penn was the innovator, and there is and fascinatingly, and I didn't know this until this research. Penn was then called Pennsylvania Rubber Company. So they were the
Oh,
rubber manufacturers,
so that's what the
and
pen
they got
stands for.
involved in tennis. There you go.
It's just
So there
short
is,
for Pennsylvania. Okay. Oh,
yeah,
that's a cool fact. Okay.
yeah. So
Wait,
Pennsylvania,
so
U.S. based.
this is
You know,
interesting you say this, Raghu. So Penn, Dunlop, these are all like began life as rubber companies, basically, right? Like
Like
doing.
Dunlop also tires, and so it's those guys just decided, look, we can just make this new revenue stream, making tennis balls,
So are these
rubber. So
tire companies making tennis balls or tennis ball companies making tires?
I think it's the former, and then
Oh,
probably they evolved into just a separate brand, spun off, and said like we are just
that's
pure tennis.
crazy. Yeah, wow.
Because I remember at one point I used to see Dunlop tires. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, are they same company, different company? But now you know
Oh, I know.
where tennis balls came from and how it's all evolved.
Crazy.
Yeah. And the modern version today of packaging is just use same pressurized cans, metal covers, and just plastic.
I
Yeah. So it's
wonder if there's some similar story where like Kentucky Fried Chicken used animal intestines to just for their employees to play, and they realized, hey, we can make old tennis balls with this or something.
right, right. And so going back to sort of like, them making a good business because tennis balls only last certain time. Let's dig in a little bit into sort of like the longevity of the ball, right? So tennis ball is filled with a combination of air and nitrogen. Nitrogen slowly diffuses out more slowly than air.
Mm.
And so that's where the combination is. So it lasts long enough for you to feel it's worth it paying for the ball, but not too long. So because you also add some air in it, so air pressure drops.
Mm.
The temperature fluctuation also affects the air pressure. Nitrogen is an inert gas, and so it doesn't move as much. So that I think it drives longevity.
Do
To
you
note,
know,
nitrogen is used in. Yeah, good.
just curious if there's you know how sometimes like the ball speed, the commentators talk about ball speed at tournaments that are at higher elevation. Is there some
Yeah,
relation to the air pressure or something?
they use a different ball. So if you're playing in, I think Bolivia has one of the higher elevations. There's a tennis tournament there.
Hmm.
And so if you're playing like Mexico City, you play in these places, the tennis ball is slightly different to account for the air pressure, right?
Fascinating.
Um, they, unlike other types of balls, tennis balls have higher air pressure on the inside than the outside. So there's more air pressure on the inside, and this creates a pressure. So this air inside the ball creates a pressure that's needed for you to hit the ball and have the traction. So every time the ball hits the ground, the air pressure inside pushes the ball back. That's how it creates the bounce. So the bounce is from the air pressure that's filled into the tennis ball, and it's the balance of the nitrogen and then the air that goes into it. So once the ball is when the ball is manufactured, it has the optimal pressure. You put in the can over time, even if you don't use it, it'll start losing pressure. So if you have to use, there's a lifespan to it. You have to use in a certain period of time, and most tennis balls under normal conditions will last at best about 3 weeks. Once you open them up,
That's it.
that's it.
Wow.
And so if you have it longer than that, even in a pressurized can, it's not going to be of much use, right? So it just dies.
I see. You mean like I take it out of a pressurized can, play with it, and put it back in a pressurized can like that? That's not
Yeah,
going
if
to
you
help.
go back
Okay.
into, I have a vacuum can, sort of like a vacuum. I put it back into it,
Hmm.
but after I open the ball, but they only last so long. Like in 3 weeks, they lose the pressure.
Man, like so, yeah, I can't get over just how many balls we must be producing and what is going on with all these balls. My God. Did you say 300 million a year?
325 million a year. So now comes
God.
the topic that's close and dear to my heart, and I am influenced and guided in this direction by my wife. Credit to her. This is all about recycling. The question is,
Yeah.
the 325 million balls, what can you do? Can you recycle?
Hmm.
And
Because rubber is pretty recyclable, right? I don't know anything about the felt. I don't know what that felt is made of. Is that like a synthetic material?
it's synthetic. It's made
Hmm.
of synthetic material. And I see it in every time I go to a tennis court, I see tennis balls strewn around, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
inside, there's outside. You never know whether they're all dead, but it's kind of not a pretty sight, and you know that your ball is only going to last 3 weeks, and it's going to end up on the site somewhere. So about 125 million tennis balls every year end up in the landfill in the US.
Ooh.
And just to get a sense of it, if you stack them up, it's 60 miles high, one on top of each other. And that's about 20 tons of waste. So it's a massive amount of waste these tennis balls create. And they're not easily biodegradable, right? Rubber, once made, takes a long time to biodegrade. And it takes over 450 years to degrade a tennis ball. It's over 6 generations
Oh my God.
of life, which is pretty incredible. So you take a tennis ball, you play for 3 weeks, and then it takes 450 years. And just imagine 125 million tennis balls in the landfill every year, at least in the US. And you're talking about billions of tennis balls in your lifetime that just sits there.
Yeah.
So fortunately, there are a couple of companies that they've created recycling programs. And I want to talk about them a little bit. And I'd love to see if we can spread the word and have people try them on and see if we can reuse and extend the life of the ball. So one of them is called Recycle Balls, and you can go check them out. They're recycleballs.org. You essentially get a prepaid UPS label. You join their quick label program, and you fill the box essentially you get a box, you fill a box with tennis balls, you ship them off to their location. They're based in Vermont, so then they will just recycle the ball. It's pretty, you know, like I think low cost. They use a rubber for reconstruction of the tennis courts. They
Wow.
create new tennis courts with your tennis balls, and so that's one use. Like a stucco, they also replace like stucco when they're using building materials,
Mm,
and they create rubber mulch. And I see a lot of that. My kids play soccer, and they use rubber mulch as one of the materials underneath the soccer field.
fascinating.
And they also make T-shirts out of your tennis ball.
T-shirts. Oh,
Pretty cool, and so on. So they use your rubber balls for a variety of is ingredient in a variety of different products. Just for reference, to build a tennis court with rubber balls, they use about 10,000 of your balls, of the tennis balls. So it's pretty cool. They use it in a very meaningful way. They don't recycle necessarily into a tennis ball so you can play again, but they use it for other purposes. So check it out, recycleballs.org. They make it easy for you. You can get a prepaid label, put it in the box, and just ship it. So there's no cost to you. And definitely worth checking out. And then you can do a little bit more of good to the world by participating in their program.
that's quite amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna go check this out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to do that myself.
I perked up when you said t-shirts. So yeah, I mean nothing better than t-shirts made out of recycled tennis balls.
So
Tennis
cool.
t-shirts. Yeah,
So
nice,
cool. Yeah,
nice.
I think we should look into that and see if we can get some out for as a part of a podcast. It's a
Slice
much.
serve merch using
There you go.
recycled tennis balls. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. And there's another company called Rebounces. So
Mm.
rebounces.com. So what they do is they put your old tennis ball in the machine, and then you get a repressurized ball. So they essentially
Ah,
recycle the ball. I don't know exactly how it works. They call themselves the green ball machine. So put the old tennis ball, they repressurize it somehow, and off comes out a ball that can play a little bit longer. And apparently, it'll last about 4x longer. That means about 12 weeks, at least 8 to 12 weeks.
that's pretty
So I
cool.
really like the idea, an alternative idea compared to recycle balls.
Yeah.
Rebounds. That means you have a dead ball, they repressurize it, it starts bouncing again. It's just beautiful. Um, so their model a little bit different, right? So they actually sell you a machine for $350, and they have, I
Ah,
think, a machine that's a little bit like um, bigger and can take on more balls. So all you do is you take your old tennis balls, you put it in the machine, it runs through this repressure and things, and out comes out a ball that lasts 4x longer. So it's a great idea, I think, for local tennis club, etc. If you're hearing, you can extend life of your tennis ball. You can offer that as a service to your customers, and you also do good to the world. So $350 for a tennis ball machine extends your life 4 times longer, and totally worth it. You buy it once, it keeps going, right? It pays you
that's pretty
back
cool.
very, very, very quickly.
Chaining these two sounds like a good idea. Yeah, you
Yeah,
extend it by 4x first, and then you send it to the company and you make t-shirts. I
exactly,
like that.
exactly. I think that's the
Wow.
combination is just awesome. I think we should get the word out to the tennis club where we play with, and highly recommend that they
Yeah,
try it on.
great. That's great. I'm
Right.
gonna go look it up.
Super excited. So keep playing tennis, get the rebounds machine, extend the life, ship it back, do good to the world, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I love it. Wow.
All right. So that comes to the end of our story today, our podcast on tennis balls, what we call felt pain. And I think I'm feeling pretty happy. It seems like we can do a lot of good also playing tennis and doing good to the world. So
Yeah.
any stories, Ravi, to wrap up here of tennis balls over the years playing with it?
Well, yeah, I can only say that oddly enough, the thing that comes to mind is when we used to play several sports growing up in India, and I remember like tennis ball cricket was the thing that comes to mind because cricket is played with a super hard, like stuffed ball, as you probably know. And I prefer tennis ball cricket because it was easier to hit and I wouldn't get hurt if the ball hit me. So that's my earliest memory of like, or interesting memory around tennis balls, not related to tennis itself. What about
Yeah, and
you?
also it has such consistent bounce. and you could predict it, and you could time the ball and all of that. So I think,
Yeah.
I agree with you on that.
I can confirm that we used these balls for more than 3 weeks,
So on
probably
that note,
10 years. Yeah.
so my recollection, like, yeah, in the US Open, they change a new set of tennis balls every 6 games. When I was playing as a kid, we would actually bring in new tennis balls every 2 days or something.
Hmm.
So they bring out tennis balls, they'll play a day, play and through the next day. At some point, the second day or so, we would actually change. Because tennis balls are expensive, we couldn't really
Yeah.
get them as easily. And we just, we didn't care so much about the perfect bounce, the longevity, and all of that. We would extend it and play much longer. And after that, we'd actually take the tennis balls and go play cricket with it. We would actually keep going. And so, but today I think we are in an age of a little bit of excess, and so we can be a little bit more smarter about usage. But
Love it. Raghu, we should add that to the chain. First, when you depressurize the ball, play with it 4 times, then play cricket, then make a t-shirt.
oh, there you go. There's all kinds of uses, buddy. All kinds
Yeah,
of uses.
yeah, yeah.
But
Reduce,
hopefully
reuse,
made
recycle.
you guys a tad smarter. I got a little bit more tennis ball, and also hopefully you can do some good to the world by recycling.
All right. Yeah, this
Let's
was
go tennis ball.
super fun, Raghu. Thank you. I learned about the colors. I really like that part, and then like the fact that they used animal intestines
Ooh.
for yeah, the early ones, and then about the pressure. That was really interesting. All new stuff to me, and the recycling bit was super interesting too. So man, that's lots of nuance.
Yeah, so much respect for the good old tennis ball.
That's right. And I
Definitely.
will not look at a pen tennis ball the same way again because it's just Pennsylvania tire company is just going to go through my head every time I see it. So wonderful, wonderful. Well, cool. Well, this was great. I hope you all enjoyed this slice of felt pain. Raghu, wonderful stuff here that you've dug up for our listeners, and hope to see you all soon with another slice coming soon.
All right. See you guys later.
See ya.
This is Slice Serve, a new tennis podcast by tennis nerds for wannabe tennis nerds. If you like this slice, which is our word for episodes, please subscribe to Slice Serve in your favorite podcast app. And if you especially know others who would enjoy this content, please consider spreading the word. We are at the Slice Serve on YouTube, X, and Instagram. And on the web, you can find us at www.sliceserve.com, where you'll find links to all our slices, but you cannot eat them. Until next time, see ya.